Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly interview show where I get to take a little bit of a dive into somebody else's perspective on movies. And back at it again for round four.
Here again.
Robert, thank you so much for coming back on.
Thank you so much for having me.
And you get to be on here for a brand new experience, which is you get to do your first film interview. So shaking things up and me not just coming up with a bunch of other random general movie questions, we actually get to go through your curriculum that you came up with last time, which I think the best part of setting these up is like, what did I talk about? And then I have to remind people sometimes about like what they talked about. But we're going to be starting things off with a very unique and timely film with Everything Everywhere All at Once getting so much buzz right now for the Daniels. They had another movie, and it's called Swiss Army Man, and it's about a Paul Dano and a farting corpse, played by Daniel Radcliffe. But Robert, before we get into my questions about this very surreal and very unique film, would you like to shamelessly plug anything for our wonderful audience?
Yeah, go follow me on Twitter at underscore Rob's Thoughts. Go follow me on Letterboxd at Robert's Thoughts. And you can follow or you can go to SiftPop.com where I and a bunch of other wonderful writers and contributors make excellent content. And one of those contributors is my friend Shane here.
Yes, it's been quite a few years at this point.
It's been two, three, four,
I
five.
can't
I don't
remember if
know.
I started in 2017 or 2018, but I've been doing this for a while and it's weird.
Yeah.
It feels like the past, what, three some years have just been a time warp. And then we
Oh, 100%.
came out the other side. And luckily we had Everything Everywhere All at Once on the other side of it this year, which has been inspiring a lot of people. But it all began with a farting corpse. And I don't know how many more times I'll say farting corpse during this interview, but I can guarantee you I will say it again. But so, Robert, what is this film about?
What is this film about? Well, it's about a farting corpse. It's about it's about a guy named Hank Thompson, played by Paul Dano, ready, who's been supposedly stranded in the wilderness
Mhm.
on the coast of the ocean for a long time, ready to end his life until he finds this farting corpse, which gives him a reason to live. And it turns out this farting corpse is has lots of different powers and abilities,
Mhm.
including a very unique compass that helps lead Hank and Manny, the farting corpse, back to civilization, where there's a interesting ending.
Yes, to say the least. It's like,
Are we spoiling that? Is this full spoilers? I'm assuming.
sure.
Okay.
And is it weird that it oddly feels like the Goonies at the end? Where like they're all looking out into the ocean, just being like, "Oh my god!" It's just like, and instead of a pirate ship, get a farting
It's
corpse.
a farting corpse.
So there you go. I said it again. Um, Now, Robert, my first question, which this is a very interesting question, is how do you think this film has developed such a following among cinephiles that it has at this point?
Well, my initial curriculum was earnestness and movies, and my designation for Swiss Army Man was committing to the bit. And I think that has a lot to do with it, is that it wholeheartedly commits to the bit of the farting corpse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Never once feels embarrassed about it. Um, that or any of the other ridiculous stuff that goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And that ties in perfectly to the themes of the movie, which is don't feel ashamed of who you are, don't feel ashamed of the things that you're interested in or natural occurrences in the human body or the human mind. Um, so the fact that those things work so well together, like how the movie was made
Mm-hmm.
and what it's communicating, and at the same time, it has like this very hopeful nihilism to it, which now with 2 movies has become a hallmark of the Daniels.
Mhm.
And its sense of humor, um, its sense of humor is very millennial, and it's niche in a way, but it also feels like right up the alley of an entire generation.
Yeah.
Um, and if you like get on board with a movie pretty early on, um, then you'll ride with the sense of humor all the way through. Um, there's an interview I saw with the Daniels one time about this movie where they said, um, since the movie's all about doing things that make you uncomfortable, but are also honest, they wanted to do things in this movie that made them feel uncomfortable. So they don't like fart jokes. They don't like a cappella music. They don't like musicals. And then they jokingly said they hate Harry Potter. So they
So we cast Harry Potter in.
exactly. So, but I think it comes across that like that earnestness, that genuine desire to push your limits, um, making something good out of things that you don't generally enjoy. Um, so all of those things that I just went through, I think all come together to make this little gem, this little perfectly rendered idea of what these 2 guys wanted to make, um, that it has connected with a lot of people.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing up the fact that like it's a feels like a generational kind of film because it's like this just hits that specific sweet spot of like people around our ages that's just like it's so idiosyncratic and weird and perfect in how it is. And like
Mm-hmm.
to be honest, I don't think millennials and Gen Z have a whole lot of things to be hopeful about with the general world around us.
Right.
But we could connect with this absurdist approach to talking about loving oneself and being comfortable in their own skin. And with that kind of universal theme, it's bound to connect with people. It might take them a little bit to get in on the ride. It took me a second time watching it to get in on the ride. And I don't know if it was watching Everything Everywhere all at once, and because that one clicked with me right away. And the
Mm-hmm.
second time watching it was even more enjoyable experience too. And that film has hot dog fingers and kung fu dildos and um fanny pack foo, um pinata people and rock people and all kinds of stuff.
Butt
And
plug fights.
yeah, somehow it all comes together. That one got me. That was the point where I was just like, oh my, this is off the rails, and I'm loving every second of it. And watching this film, it's so uniquely itself.
Right.
And I'm gonna say this. Not that I don't want the Daniels to make a shit ton of money in their life, but please do not sign up to make giant studio films and
Yeah.
stop making movies like this.
Well, I think they actually got approached to make an episode of Loki. I think they turned that down because they just aren't interested. So I don't think we have to worry about that.
Yes, they did not do the Benson and Moorhead, which their movies are also quite unique and strange. Except
Mm-hmm.
then they did wind up doing Moon Knight and Loki. But like I'm not gonna fault them. They're making money. It's a job.
Sure.
The job in the end. But like I just want them to keep making things like this. And there's some directors like Taika Waititi who I wish would just go back and start making more movies like this again and just enjoy that kind of thing. But I hope they keep pumping out unique and strange and weird films like this. Now, what do you feel like specifically the Daniels bring from a directing standpoint to make this strange premise come together?
Um, can I ask you quick, have you seen The Death of Dick Long?
Yes.
So that's Daniel Scheinert on his own directing.
Uh-huh.
Um, And I don't like that one nearly as much as Swiss Army Man or Everything Everywhere. I think it's okay, and I think it has interesting ideas, but at the same time, I think that these two guys direct better together. Um, I haven't much or watched much background or behind the scenes stuff on them, so I don't know like what's each of their strengths and everything. But they must bounce off each other and balance out each other well because, um, like I said, their ideas are really well rendered.
Mhm.
Um, they it doesn't go too far in one direction or another. Like it doesn't. It's absurd all the way through. It's absurd, but it's not like too absurd that you lose track of what is going on.
Mhm.
Like I said, it always fits right back into the theme of the movie. Um, I think they easily bring their quirk and that they have, and like I said, that they're better together, and their life affirming nihilism just works between their writing and their directing.
Yeah, because like you could definitely feel a sense of grounding in their film where there's some real serious emotion. Like, God, everything everywhere all at once makes you feel real hard twice.
Mhm.
Wasn't bad enough for them to try to rekindle a marriage, then they had to rekindle a mother and daughter relationship too on top of it. But like in all that absurdity, there's heart and soul to it. And you
Mhm.
get that here too. And they're able to balance that. So, and I appreciate the point where it's like it feels like controlled chaos.
Right.
Like it's not chaos. There always seems to be a steady hand pulling the strings on this, and it all fully realized. And now that you brought up, I didn't even realize that one of the Daniels did direct that. And now in hindsight, I'm like, it is one of the Daniels who
Oh yeah.
directed that. Like from like a visual standpoint, it has all of that. But it's interesting because like you know me, I'm a humongous Coen Brothers fan, and watching Joel direct on his own without Ethan is a lot more serious. Like, I what did they crack like one joke the whole entire tragedy of Macbeth? It's a very serious affair, and you kind of wonder is Ethan the one with a sense of humor
Yeah.
that kind of like balances things out? And I still love Tragedy of Macbeth. It was just an observation. Like this kind of
Sure.
lacks. It felt like it was lacking a part of the Coen brothers. And I wonder if we watch more and more of these two doing films together and then some apart, we might notice it's like that's kind of what they each bring to the table here. And for two people that aren't blood brothers like the Coen brothers are, who might actually be a symbiotic relationship
Right.
in some way,
Share a brain.
share a brain. Like these two very unique people come together to make like is it that not one human being could come up with this absurdity and somehow make it work, but the two of them together surely make it work.
Mhm.
I find it so interesting what Daniel Radcliffe's career has been since Harry Potter. And why do you think this is such a perfect role for him to take?
I've been wondering lately if he's gonna get a role where it's like where it clicks, where like he just clicks in the mainstream where um people in general are like, "Oh, he's more than Harry Potter." Because since
I was hoping Weird would be that, but then it was a Roku original, nobody watched
right,
it.
exactly, because he does stuff like Swiss Army Man and Weird, which become very niche.
Mhm.
Um but that's kind of besides the point because for Swiss Army Man, I think I kind of hate to compare it back to Harry Potter because as kind and friendly and generous of a guy he seems to be, based on all his interviews and like how he talks about Harry Potter very graciously, I think he just wants to move on from it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was noticing this time around watching Swiss Army Man, there's a very similar wide-eyed innocence to the character of Manny that there is to the early Harry Potter films, specifically the first two, the Columbus movies.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's what he really brings to it. It's like a childlike wonder
Mhm.
that it's not Harry's wondrous wizarding world, but it's just like the wonder at the regular world
Yeah.
that unfortunately it's a loss of innocence really quickly, because Hank breaks it down really quickly. Um,
Mm.
but the fact that he brings that wonder, that amazement, as soon as he quote unquote starts coming back to life.
Mhm.
I don't know who else could have done it the way he did it, because again, that's back to the heart of the movie, is just like appreciating the world for what it is, and not at first he's not letting anyone else tarnish it for him. Um, and yeah, it's just the humor that he brings to it, the facial expressions that he brings to it. It's all quintessentially him.
It's fantastic, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I felt on the surface this feels like such a divergence from Harry Potter, and I think that's what he needed
Oh
to
yeah,
just
yeah.
like get that out of the way. But then, to be honest, he does channel some of that into this in a very specific kind of way. Because like you look at the careers of like Rupert Grint doing Servant, where he's just like a
Hmm.
piece of crap. He's
Yeah,
such a jerk. He's so unron of him. And then
very
obvious,
entertaining though.
yeah, yes, get one more season. And then Emma Watson obviously has gone on to do different things because, playing a frumpy girl from a village who likes to read, who very obviously is not frumpy, which is the most unbelievable thing about Beauty and the Beast. Uh,
Hmm.
very obviously. But, Daniel Radcliffe has done such great things. I love Miracle Workers. The work he
Oh, me
does on
too.
that show is so fantastic and fun and weird. Oh my God, that was so delightful. And this is a delightful thing. And it's really, I think it's so hard to not get overshadowed by this talking, farting corpse. But how do you feel like Paul Dano was able to stand out in his own way in this film?
Well, first I want to point out that Paul Dano's character's name is Hank Thompson, which if you flip it around, Tom Hanks. Um, he's a castaway basically, and I'm pretty sure that was intentional.
There you
And I love it.
go.
Um, but Dano is always really good at getting philosophical and sometimes depressive.
Mhm.
Uh, the first two roles that come to mind, or two of his earliest, which are Little Miss Sunshine and There Will Be Blood. And
Yep.
I think in very different movies, he channels similar energy in this one, where it's just like, hey, what is the meaning of life?
Yeah.
Or like, what is it like to be depressed and alone in what you're doing, which is very much Little Miss Sunshine. You know,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think that he's just a great versatile actor,
Mhm.
um, with great comedic timing, especially in this one. Uh, and for a guy like this who's worked with Paul Thomas Anderson so early in his career, Daniel Day-Lewis,
Mhm.
uh, he you could say he would have every right to act like Swiss Army Man is beneath him in some ways, but he never acts like it. Like he
No.
just like every single part of this movie is fully bought in, and especially these main two actors. Um, just like the image that comes to mind is just like using Manny's teeth to shave his face, that sort of thing. It's just like, and dancing in his underwear, picking berries and all that kind of stuff. It's just fully ridiculous. But he balances that silliness with the real deep, depressive, thoughtful states.
Yeah, if you did not have these two actors committed, this would not work.
Mhm. Right.
And they were able to find two actors that hit that frequency and were able to make it work. And Paul Dano, of course, is having quite a year for himself, uh, with 2022 wrapping up with the Batman and with the Fablemans. And he's still doing some great work. It was really nice seeing him in a leading role
Hmm.
because generally he doesn't get those kinds of roles. And, you know, having to act against Daniel Day Lewis so intensely is quite an achievement. And he held his own. And here he's having to hold his own against a character that so easily could have overshadowed just this regular guy stranded out in the wilderness. But we connect with him, we care about him, and we have that. Now, his character starts off in a very specific place, which is him trying to commit suicide. What do you think the significance is of starting the story at this point and then him finding this corpse and everything coming after this?
I think they take Hank on a very clear journey from beginning to end.
Mhm.
So he's at one very distinct pole at the beginning of ready for death, um, deeply depressed, not wanting anything else, feeling completely and hopelessly alone. Um, and by the end, it's the exact opposite. He's ready for life, ready to embrace everything, um, go after what makes life worth living,
Mhm.
learning how to be happy, what happiness means, learning about companionship, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's important to show him go from literally the lowest point to that point that I was just describing. Um, there was a second part to your question, but I don't remember what you said. Um, but
Well, no, it
yeah, I think
was
it's
just
important
focused like,
they,
what do you
yeah.
think, like, starting off with that attempted suicide was and what the significance was? And it makes sense. It's like you're trying to take him from the most extreme point of giving up on life to fully realizing the importance of life. And I do think this might kind of loop in too, but why a corpse? Like there's so many different things from like a storytelling perspective that they could have incorporated for him to like learn these lessons from.
Mhm.
Like could have been like a random talking animal or imaginary friend that's not a corpse. But what do you think the significance of him befriending this corpse and building that connection?
Um, this will probably be stepping on the toes of later questions a little bit, but
Uh,
um, I I think Hank is effectively the corpse in this situation because I don't know how literally or metaphorically this is all supposed to be taken, and we can
yeah.
get to that in a minute.
Oh.
Um, but it's like I mentioned when I was talking about Daniel Radcliffe, he's uh taking a literal human body,
Mhm.
but starting with a blank slate, right? So um this is a functioning human body that knows how to talk, but and has like some abilities, but also needs to learn all of the terms about life and everything.
Yeah.
So um since you have a real human, he's able to pump life and meaning and understanding and happiness and all this kind of stuff right into this effectively dead body,
Mhm.
which in some ways is what Hank is doing to himself. Because you could say, metaphorically, he starts off the movie effectively as a corpse himself,
Mhm.
right? And by
At
the
least
end,
intending to make himself one.
exactly. So by the end, uh, he's brought life to a couple corpses in a way, you know, the corpse of Manny and the corpse of himself. Um, at one point, Manny says, this is the life I've forgotten," and that's kind of where Hank has gotten to, where he's
Yeah.
forgotten what life is, forgotten how to dance, forgotten how to listen to music, enjoy looking out the window on the bus, and all the other things that they do. So he goes on this journey of, like I said, bringing this corpse from a state of death to a state of life. So I think it's really effective instead of doing like a talking animal or like a friendly ghost or something like that. It's very intentional.
Well, yeah, and I think it works so well. And this might even, I don't know if you have anything to add to this question, but it might kind of have flowed from your answer for that one. But how's Manny represent the themes of the film?
Yeah, like I was saying, it's him reconvincing himself of all of these things. So at your most innocent state, you know that looking out the window on the bus is beautiful inherently, and just like seeing people be happy is beautiful inherently, or just like what they're scared of doing, of talking to someone on the bus, like that's not natural. Like we're social beings, we're social creatures. Um, so relearning all these things through Manny, whose uh default is basically just like, oh, there's someone I want to be friends with them. I want to go talk to them. Like uh Hank needs to learn those things again, which he probably knew when he was a kid. Um, Manny is a blank slate who hasn't been skewed by a life of being shunted and being alone and being the weird one and
He's not
all
jaded.
this kind of stuff. Exactly. He's not jaded. So he's confused about why it's weird to talk about farts or weird to talk about erections and stuff like that. Um, and that's only because everyone has become jaded. But that like we don't need to be. So yeah, like I said, it all works into the themes really perfectly.
Be like man.
Yes.
Be like a farting corpse. Uh,
Farting corpse.
Now, the biggest question that I have is what is actually real in the context of this movie? Or at least from your perspective, what do you think is actually real and happening in this movie?
So in the cave scene, um, towards the very beginning, Hank says to Manny, I don't, or he says to Manny, you're a miracle, or I'm just hallucinating from starvation. So I don't know if there is a real answer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the biggest deficiency of the whole movie, uh, which I'll grant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the same time, I think it kind of works as a nebulous middle where you can take it either way, where it's like, hey, he was kind of hallucinating all this, and it's making him, you know, be zealous for life again at the end instead of, ready to kill himself. Or at the same time, he's teaching a corpse what the importance and what the meaning of life is, while also doing the same for himself. Um, I like it better personally, just like Hank having a dialogue with like the most basic uh stripped down part of himself that hasn't been jaded, like you said. Um, but yeah, at the same time, you could take it literally because like there would have to be a lot of imagination because the little girl mentions a line that Manny said, so she definitely heard him talk, and it's just like it's a little muddled. So I don't know if it's entirely clear what's real and what's not, but I think the messages and just the quirk and the humor and the characters work so well with either reading that it doesn't really bother me.
Well, I think that's the thing is this film transcends needing an answer
Oh yeah, yeah.
because it works no matter how you slice it, and it doesn't really matter. Hank's in a better place at the end, and I think that's what really does matter. And whether this is magical realism, where it's just like there really is a talking corpse here, and
Mhm.
he's talking to this actual talking corpse and experiencing all these things, or like he is just hallucinating all of it, the result's the same. And the journey is just as real. Because even if Manny's not real and it was just a corpse the whole time, or if Manny is a talking corpse and helping Hank learn all these things in the end, Hank is indeed in a better place and went on a journey and grew throughout the film. So that's what the
And he's
most
starting to
important.
affect the people around him too, right? Because as the other characters may or may not be seeing Manny swim out into the middle of the ocean, they're like having these amazed expressions. So they're starting to learn that like, hey, we can kind of strip down to the basics and not have to put earbuds in on the bus and have regular human interactions.
Well, and that's exactly, I think, an interesting point because how you put that is he is making an impact and it's infectious.
Mm-hmm.
And whether them seeing and hearing Manny is for real or not, or just a metaphor for the positivity that one person can translate to another person, it works either way. And that's the important thing is that people are learning and growing by the end of the film. Because you have um Mary Elizabeth Winstead just popping up there at the end, who's been the fixation with
Right.
Hank this whole entire time. I just love her reaction where she's just like, "Wait, why are there pictures of me on your phone?" And you're just like, um, let's forget about that. Farting corpse.
Right, because he is a bit creepy, right? Like it's definitely pretty creepy, but it's
it
almost in an endearing way because of his performance and because you know where it comes from. Like you can understand that fixation and taking secret pictures is wrong
Yeah.
while
You
still
spend this
buying
whole
into the
entire
journey.
movie getting to know him and realizing that he's a better person at the end of the film than he was at the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, like, we know he grew. She has no idea who this person is, and you're just like, are you stalking me?
Yep.
But at the end, we know he's a better person. So
Mhm.
I think that's why we can let that go a little bit. We'll admit, Hank didn't always do the right things.
Oh yeah.
Originally, but by the end, he's a much better person. Now, I really wanted to add this question as the last question because I think this is a fun and interesting question. So, they make a film about a man and a farting corpse teaching him how to live life again. Then they make a multiverse spinning family drama with martial arts action, science fiction, and fantasy. What do you want to see the Daniels tackle next?
I have no idea. It's probably a cop out. It's definitely a cop out answer, but I'm ready for anything absurdly existential and genre blending because like the way you just described these is like you can't pin it down. You can't be like,
No.
oh yeah, everything ever was just a sci-fi or like same thing for Swiss Army Man. It's like all these little different disparate pieces come together to make the whole. So it's like I'm ready for anything.
Well, and you can't even tell if Swiss Army Man's a fantasy magical realism or just, a psychological drama because like
Right.
you don't know what's really going on, so it doesn't really matter. And I think I think you brought up the most important thing is as long as they're channeling those themes that speak to them and then they're creating interesting and engaging, bold, unique stories around them, I think we're all going to be happy. So,
Yeah.
and make it weird. Keep it weird. Oh, I think the best response to this is what I had been seeing popping up on TikTok is that clip from do you watch Always Sunny?
No.
There's one clip where Frank's like, you know what? It's a new year. I'm gonna make it weird. I feel like the Daniels are like, we have an idea and we're gonna make it. And that's what they do. And at this point, I love them for it. So
Yeah, what's the next like most boring or lowbrow thing? Because the way they were describing everything everywhere before it came out was just like, we want to make a movie about taxes. So like I wonder like what else we can go with. Because like you got lowbrow
online
with fart
dating.
jokes. Yeah, there we go. It's like they haven't done a romance yet, so let's do online dating.
Oh my God.
But what are the random twists and turns they're gonna throw in?
We
Just
can't even
like
imagine.
historical fiction, time travel, online dating. I don't know.
Somebody, oh my God, time traveling online apps where you could date people across timelines and stuff.
So their version of Midnight in Paris.
Yes, except dating
Yes.
instead of, and you know what? They could channel some of the same kind of ideas. The past is always better.
Mhm.
Hear my mom talk about it all the time. Oh, things were so much better when I was a kid, and yada yada yada. These things you didn't have, these things you didn't have. I'm just like, okay. Everybody was so much happier in the 50s and the 60s. And I'm like, yeah, all the women on their drugs at home being stay-at-home
Yeah.
moms and all of their husbands sleeping with their secretaries and women on the road when they went away for business. So much better times.
One of the only insightful things about Don't Worry, Darling.
Yes. Which takes all those things and throws in the fact that this is some kind of virtual reality game.
So maybe we just reinvented Don't Worry Darling accidentally.
I think they'd do it better.
Yeah.
I'm almost convinced they would do it better. I'd still like to see Chris Pine, though. Oh, and Florence Pugh is just amazing. So
we'll keep Chris Pine and Florence Pugh, recast everyone else, and have a totally different style.
Or, just recast everybody but Harry Styles. And keep everybody but Harry Styles.
Oops.
I really hope it's a whole other thing. I won't even get into it. But, Robert, this was a fun conversation about a fun movie that is one of the most absurd, weirdest things. This is the kind of movie that's like, oh, what's it about?
Well, let me sit down and tell you.
Well, let me tell you. Farting corpse.
Farting corpses.
Oh, you know what they should do? Aliens. Aliens.
Make your hair all wild.
Aliens. But Robert, thank you so much as always for coming on and chatting movies with me.
Of course, I always have a blast.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.